Chapter 1. The Means of Grace. Do you lament your lack of spiritual growth? Do you long to be more conformed to the image of Christ? If you answered in the affirmative, then this brief work is for you. However, you must be forewarned that you will find no easy answer or quick fix to your spiritual life in these pages, nor will you discover something novel or new. Here, you will find only an ancient remedy to an ancient problem. A hard medicine will be offered to you that most people would rather bypass for a more pleasant elixir. However, if you are sick of being sick, if you have wandered long enough in the foothills and are willing to take the hard path up the mountain, then this little work may offer you some help, some means of growing beyond where you are. There is a very important theological phrase in Latin that every Christian of every language ought to learn and apply to his or her life. The phrase is media gratiae, and its English translation is means of grace. For centuries, the Church has employed this little phrase to describe those means or gifts that the Lord Jesus Christ has given to the Church for its ongoing sanctification or growth in holiness. The most prominent and essential of these means are the study of the Scriptures, devotion to prayer, and participation in the life and ministry of the local church. These means are not works that must be accomplished in order to earn or merit salvation, but they are gifts from God through which the believer may grow in the salvation that he or she has received by grace alone, through faith alone, in Jesus Christ. As the Apostle Paul wrote, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast." Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 9. The Scriptures prove over and over that salvation is monergistic, that is, the work of one. God is the author and agent of our salvation, and we are the objects of His saving work. However, with equal force, the Scriptures also teach that our growth in sanctification is synergistic, that is, the collective work of two or more. This is wonderfully illustrated in Paul's admonition to the church in Philippi. "Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you both to will and to do for His good pleasure." Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 through 13. Take note of the perfect balance. Since it is God who works in us both to will and to do for His good pleasure, we are to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling, that is, with the greatest reverence toward God and the most profound solemnity with regard to the task. There is no room in biblical Christianity for apathy, a lack of discipline, or a let go and let God attitude. To more fully understand what is meant by the phrase media gratiae, it is helpful to add the Latin adjective ordinarius, or ordinary. Media gratiae refers to the ordinary means of grace, or the ordinary way in which God has decreed that Christians will grow in conformity to Christ. We live in a day when it seems that everyone in the church is waiting for something extraordinary, a move of the Spirit that will correct all our spiritual maladies in a moment's time and with little effort or cost on our part. Although such an extraordinary revival is altogether possible and should be desired, it is not God's ordinary means of growing His church. Our desire for the extraordinary should never lead us to neglect the ordinary means that God has given us to grow. In fact, in God's economy, He usually does not perform the extraordinary until His people have exhausted the ordinary means that He has provided.